Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of our Hazards Webinar Wednesdays. We are hosting these series throughout the hurricane season to get a jump start on conversations surrounded on the topic of preparedness and recovery. But these concepts and strategies are relevant to other hazards that Texas experiences as well. So previously we discussed topics relevant to homeowners and business owners. We covered things like insurance, business disruption plans, resilient building codes and ordinances. And we also had a previous webinar on the topic of recovery. For those of you who don't know, my name is Ashley Bennis. I am a planning specialist with Texas Sea Grant. I'm located in Corpus Christi. And I work with communities throughout the coastal bend on different aspects planning related and hazard mitigation. So my co-host for these webinars has always been Kate DeJaneiro. She is also a planning specialist and she works in the Rio Grande Valley region. So today we have invited guests to share resources and information about avoiding fraud after a disaster. When a community is hit hard by a natural or man-made disaster, we often see the very best and the very worst of people. There are many examples of good Samaritans and people there to support, but we all know that there's examples of individuals that are looking to take advantage of the situation. So two of the most common occurrences are bogus charity organizations that are set up right as the community is trying to go through recovery, and efforts to help with cleanup and work repair and never delivering on those. So in these situations, holding individuals accountable can be difficult. For example, in the aftermath of Hurricane Harvey, hundreds of complaints were filed against Texas contractors for a range of issues, from shoddy work to fraudulent schemes to taking the money and just running. In one example of strategies to mitigate these risks for constituents, the city of Rockport and Aransas County set up a contractor registry for their constituents. So the city certified contractors and had them listed out for public accessibility, and residents were encouraged to reference that list if they were thinking of hiring a contractor. And that is our goal for today's webinar, providing resources and information that in the event homeowners and residents need to repair or update their homes, they know what to look for, how to vet a potential contractor, and where to turn if they are a victim of fraud. So if you're a representative from a local government, the tips outlined today can help you come up with messaging and to prepare your constituents in the event that your community is hit by a disaster. So the webinar will be recorded today, and we'll send out a YouTube link to all attendees once we are ready to go with that. So please share that with your networks and anyone who isn't in attendance, and please use some of this messaging when you're approaching your constituents and residents about what they need to do to protect themselves. My co-host Kate is going to put some links in the chat box to our other videos and previous webinars that we've had, and also our social media posts, so you can keep up to date with what we're doing. So we are going to begin with our first presentation with Jerry Ramp, the Director of Community and Quality Assurance with the General Land Office. And I am going to share my screen and launch a PowerPoint, and hopefully this works out.
Welcome everyone to this portion of the webinar, How to Avoid Fraud After a Disaster. My name is Jerry Rum. I work for the Texas General Land Office. I'm Director of Community and Quality Assurance, basically a fancy title for I oversee construction, contract management with our builders. We've built about 3,500 houses. I work with 11 builders on a regular basis. So that's kind of my background, and so you know who's speaking to you today. We want to talk about fraud. We need to understand fraud. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about the basics of fraud, the background of fraud, and then give you some very practical suggestions. Fraud in a disaster, how do you prevent it, is the same way you prevent it before a disaster. What changes is the amount of pressure. When there's a disaster, pressure goes off the chart. Everything needs to be, it's chaotic. We need to get stuff done now, so forth. So the better your house is in order before a disaster, the better you'll handle fraud afterwards. That's what we want to talk about a little bit. The fraud triangle, some of you probably are aware of this, some of you maybe not, was developed in the 70s by a criminologist named Donald R. Cressy. He said there's really three legs or three parts of the triangle: opportunity, pressure, and rationalization. The opportunity to commit fraud, the pressure that forces someone or causes someone to think, I'm going to do this, and then once they're making that decision, they rationalize it. We can control the opportunity to a great extent. We can control the pressure to some extent. We really can't do much about the rationalization. That's more of an internal process than external. So let's talk about opportunity. Opportunity is where as I said, we have the most control. Failure in this area is really internal. It's caused by either the municipality not having enough controls or the homeowner not doing their due diligence when they're entering into a relationship with a contractor or recovering from a disaster. Lack of controls. Who knows what's really going on? Generally, you want at least 2 points of control in any kind of financial dealings, any kind of contractual dealing. So if you don't know if you don't know who knows what's really going on before a disaster, you absolutely won't know after. But if you've got processes in place before, you work those processes. You just work them faster. Lack of staffing. We all deal with this. We all struggle with this. I don't have enough people to really do this, to have double controls everywhere. I would argue that you probably, if that's the case, you can't afford to not put those controls in place. You can do processes that will streamline what the staff actually has to do. Expedience. Fraud's committed because it's easier, faster, quicker, and in a disaster, easier, faster, quicker, and cheaper all come into play. So that creates enormous opportunities. Failure happens when you have a single control point. I'm going to have a case study here in just a second where the clerk of a small city was in control of the entire process and embezzled a boatload of money. One person, one signature, never good idea. Now, if you're a homeowner, you are that control point, and you just have to double up and make sure that you look twice at everything. And lastly, the Mr. and Mrs. Nice Gal, Nice Guy syndrome. That's what I call it. Nobody wants to be the bad guy. Nobody wants to distrust someone or to think badly of someone or company, and so we just trust them. And I'm mindful of what President Reagan said: trust but verify, and that's really important, even though maybe it doesn't make you the nice guy or the nice gal. Center, Missouri, a little town, 600 people. City clerk worked there for 15 years. For the last 5 years of her tenure, she committed vast amounts of fraud and theft. She was finally caught because a whistleblower reported that she'd not filed some annual reports with the state. And when they started looking into that, they realized that she had stolen, wait for it, $317,000 over 5 years. That's a third of their annual budget. That's a lot of money for a little town of 600 people. Opportunity. She was the one in control. Anybody had a question, ask her. Nobody was willing to question her. She'd been there forever. She got away with it for a long time. She was sentenced to almost 20 years in jail. Second portion of that triangle is pressure. Pressure comes from both internal and external causes. It comes from within us and it comes from without. Internal would be poor pay, lowest bidder. Lowest bidder is not always best value. And if you are having work done on the cheap and you're squeezing your people financially, that's pressure on them to cut corners, to do it with less quality, to do it with less care, to do it with poorer quality materials and so forth. Unrealistic expectations. Can you say disaster? Again, when there's a disaster, everybody wants everything repaired yesterday, and it's just not possible. But that kind of pressure leads to cutting corners, leads to fraud, both financial as well as, you know, fraudulently signing documents and so forth, just to move things forward. A lack of pay equity. If people in your office, somehow everybody figures out what other people are making. And if there's a great disparity, the person on the bottom of the totem pole will feel that pressure, and that can turn into, well, I deserve to, do this. External pressure comes from financial mismanagement. In other words, the corporation itself is not handling things well, which then filters down to your job. Homeowners may have financial pressure, or your contractor may have financial pressure, or whatever. And so this kind of mismanagement, when you put it in the crucible of a disaster, it will crack. Health and personal issues. This is particularly true for your staff when they have extra pressures from outside, anger. We're not treated fairly. We're not paid fairly. Addictions, huge issue these days. All of these things you don't really control, but you ought to be aware of them, and you ought to notice them, and you ought to think, hey, what's going on with this person? What's going on with this contractor? What's going on with these folks? And it's a red flag. Does it mean that they're going to commit fraud? No, absolutely not. Most people won't. But this is what leads to even good people sometimes making bad decisions. Another case study for you. This is Dixon, Illinois. It was finalized in 2012. It's a little bigger town, but still a pretty small town, 16,000 people. This lady, it happens to be another lady, could be man, but in this case, a lady, worked for the city for 40 years, and her last job was as the comptroller. For half of that time, she was committing wire fraud and theft. She had a horse industry, quarter horse, down in Florida, stables, horses, yachts, all this stuff. This is a small town. There's 16,000 people. Over those 20 years, she stole, wait for it, $53 million. Say, how can that happen? Well, again, everybody trusted her. No controls in place. It happens. Rationalization, nothing you can do about this, but generally, unless somebody is just a really damaged personality, generally people rationalize it. In the first case study that I gave you, the city took away health insurance because they couldn't afford it. Well, guess what? Part of the money that she stole went for? It went for health insurance. I'm sure she rationalized in her mind, well, the city really owes me this. They said they were going to pay it, so I'm just going to get it this way. Nothing you can do about it, but just be aware that that's part of the fraud triangle. All right. Let's talk about some practical ways to avoid fraud. Trust but verify. Never, and again, you never say never, but never have single track financial practices. What I mean by that is one person makes all the decisions, knows everything, nobody else is looking over their shoulder. Don't do that. You've got to have checks and balances. You've got to have two people. So if somebody takes the money, they shouldn't be the people that put the money in the bank. Or if they take the money and put the money in the bank, somebody else needs to reconcile the bank statement. Or again, just make sure that more than one person is involved and knows what's going on. Lowest bid. I understand some communities and homeowners, they want the cheapest job possible. Not only do you get what you pay for, but you often set up the opportunity and the pressure for someone to actually commit fraud, to steal materials, to sell them, to substitute materials, to not do all the work they're supposed to, etc. Another thing is document. Homeowners, when you enter into a contract with someone, put it in writing, even if it's as simple as you're going to replace my kitchen cabinets for this amount of money. Yeah. Again, you write it down. Transparency. We should have our contracts, everything about what we're doing as communities should be open and transparent and available for anybody to look at it. All of that light shed helps avoid the darkness of fraud. Pay attention. Whether you're a homeowner, whether you're a small muni or a big muni, pay attention, especially to the small stuff, little things. Say, well, that's a little weird. Well, if it's a little weird, look into it. Yeah, but they might feel bad. Again, see, that's that nice guy, nice gal syndrome. Pay attention. If something feels funny, smells funny, looks funny, I'm not saying it is funny, but it's certainly, don't just hide it underneath, uh, just ignore it. Lots of opportunity for feedback. Make sure there's a hotline. Make sure everybody knows what the hotline is. Make sure everybody can access it. And then when they do, listen to it. Move on it. Again, regular outside audits. Yes, they cost money. They're expensive. $53 million stolen from a 16,000 population city. Which is more expensive? Individuals, homeowners, again, same thing, trust but verify. This is true for homeowners as well as munis. Resist the tyranny of the urgent. I get it. Your house is damaged. It may have a leak in it. Put a tarp over it. Take your time. Slow down. Door-to-door contractors come out of the woodwork in a disaster. Some of them are outstanding people. Some of them will take your money and run. Slow down, check things out. It's so difficult to do, whether you're a municipality or a homeowner in the midst of a disaster, to slow down, but you have to. Otherwise, bad things happen. Vet any contractors you intend to use. Look into them. Were they recommended by someone you know? That's good because that gives you some confidence. Ask for their bonding and their insurance. If they don't have it, get somebody else. Are they from out of town? That's not a deal breaker, but it's important to know. Where'd they come from? Who'd they work for there? How many years have they been in business? Can they prove that? Not just, oh, we've been in business for 10 years. So how can I verify that? Well, it's on my website or whatever. Get everything in writing. Write it down. This is what you're doing. This is what I'll pay you. Never pay the full amount in advance. Don't do it. Just don't do it. I am literally, yesterday, I'm doing some work having some work done on my house, and the contractor asked me for it in advance if I could give it to him. I said, I really can't. I'll pay for the materials. Let me know what you need. I'll be glad to do that. But I can't really give you an advance. So just, again, you give them the money. If they're under a lot of pressure or they're bad people, they may take your money and run. And I've had homeowners in disasters that I've dealt with who have been in that situation, and there's virtually nothing that can be done because you can't find the person. Slow down. Vet the people you want to use. Get a second opinion. Again, that may be very difficult in a disaster, but if at all possible, even if it's just a friend who knows a little bit about construction, get somebody to verify. They want $75,000 to replace my roof. Is that a good price? Go on the internet. You can get a lot of good information on the internet. Be visible when your contractor's there. This is true whether you're a muni or a homeowner. Just show up at the job site. Be there. Say, well, I don't know anything about construction. It doesn't matter. Act like you do. Just walk around. Look at what they're doing. Note their progress. Say, how's it going? Good to see you. Can I get you bring you lunch? Whatever. But be visible. Be out there. If they're in your house, that's not a problem. But if you're in a hotel or whatever, you show up. It's your house. Make sure that they're doing the work they said they would do, and just knowing that you show up will help a great deal to avoid fraud. And then, as we all know, if it sounds too good to be true, yeah, it probably is. Every once in a while, you hit you hit the mother lode, but mostly be very careful. And when you're in the midst of a disaster, you're so desperate, you'll grab any lifeline that comes along. Resist the urge to do that. All right, just to sum up, the biggest difference in avoiding fraud after disaster is the pressure of time. If you get your fraud house in order before a disaster, then all you have to deal with is the pressure of the disaster itself. If your house is not in order, now you're trying to put your house in order in the midst of all the chaos of a disaster, and that doesn't work very well. That will help you navigate that pressure, and don't cut corners. The pressure of a disaster, we all want to cut corners. It will work out badly virtually every time. Work the process. Stay committed to the process, even though it's hard to do when the pressure's on. All right, that finishes my presentation, and I think that we will now open it up for some question and answers. You can always contact me at the address there as well. Thank you for listening, and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Jerry. Let me try to multitask. So our next speaker for today is Fred Lohman. He is Director of Operations for the Southwest region at the National Insurance Crime Bureau. So Fred, I'm going to have you turn on your camera, and I am going to pull up your PowerPoint.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting us to this webinar, and hopefully your viewers will get some good information from our discussion today about avoiding contractor and disaster fraud. So just a little bit about the National Insurance Crime Bureau. We've been in existence for 109 years, and we are the nation's premier organization that is dedicated to combating insurance crime in the United States. Excuse me, go to the next slide, please. So we do that through our intelligence and analysis, learning and development, which is the training of insurance industry professionals, law enforcement professionals, and then strategy, policy, and planning, which is NICB's focus of working with our federal, state, and local government and regulatory agencies to develop policy and strategy to combat insurance crimes. So it's all, three legs to the stool to help combat insurance crime in the country. Next slide, please. So for me, I'm a retired law enforcement officer of 20 years. And after retirement, I spent almost 10 years as a special investigator with an insurance company. And I've been with the National Insurance Crime Bureau for 15 years, overseeing our operations in the state of Arkansas, Louisiana, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and of course, Texas. And I recently was assigned responsibility for managing our Foreign Operations Office in Chula Vista, California, which is responsible for the repatriation of stolen vehicles, heavy equipment, aircraft, and boats from foreign countries. Next slide, please. So today, I just want to give you a brief overview of NICB's efforts to combat contractor fraud, give you some suggestions, recommendations, best practices on how business owners or property owners or even municipalities or county organizations can put in place safeguards to mitigate contractor and disaster fraud in the aftermath of a natural disaster. Next slide, please. Just like every other type of crime that occurs, insurance fraud, contractor disaster fraud is no different. It occurs because there's opportunity for it to occur. And the previous speaker mentioned the chaos that occurs in the aftermath of a natural disaster or catastrophe, and the pressure that it's upon not only government officials in those communities where the disaster occurred, but also the insurance companies and the victims of the disaster, the homeowners, business owners, and so forth that suffer losses. And there is tremendous pressure to do something and to get things back to some sense of normalcy. And so when that happens, not every one of them, but there are, just like every other profession, there are good contractors, and then there are those that have a little larceny in their heart, as I like to say, that take advantage of these disasters, and they basically prey upon people, to enrich themselves. And that's the focus of what we're going to talk about today, is trying to give you some strategies and suggestions on how to avoid becoming a victim to those with larceny in their heart. So property damage, this can refer to your home or your business. And as I like to state, the most important things in your life, your family, loved ones, your possessions, they're all contained within the walls and the roof of your homes. Everything that's important to you is right there. And the same thing with your business. I mean, everything that you need to conduct business and make a living is all contained within that structure. So you want to be very careful on who you allow to come in, make repairs, and handle losses that have occurred as a result of a natural disaster. And as the previous speaker mentioned, you want to be vigilant. You want to slow down, give yourself an opportunity to talk, to think through the process, so that you don't make a hasty mistake that ends up costing you long term. Next slide, please. So this slide represents, some of the primary ways that business owners, property owners, residential owners who have suffered losses are taken advantage of. So the low cost, quick repairs, right? You'll get a knock on your door. It's a contractor or maybe a roofing contractor, and they're offering to tarp your roof to prevent further damage to the interior of your home. They're going to lowball the amount, but there's one catch. They want payment up front, and you want to really avoid falling into that trap. That's just a very bad idea, is to make payments up front to contractors, especially if you don't know who these folks are. They could be out of town contractors that descend upon areas in the aftermath of a natural disaster. And they're there basically to take advantage of you. They may even avoid obtaining a solicitor's license. If you're in a municipality that requires that, you'll look and you'll see there's no solicitor's license or permit that's with them when they're knocking on your door. You want to be extremely cautious and hesitant dealing with contractors of that type. Another thing that we see at the National Insurance Crime Bureau is they'll use inferior material. One of the things we noticed this past year, we had two very large, over $1 billion in losses, hailstorms that struck the Dallas-Fort Worth metropolitan area. And we noticed that there was a number of thefts of roofing material, because we have two large roofing manufacturers up here in the DFW area. And what they were doing is they were stealing loads of roofing material, which was really destined for the landfill. They were inferior at some point in the manufacturing of that shingle. And what the crooks did is they took that material and then they sold it to some of these what we call fly by night or two chucks in a truck roofing contractors. And that's really what they wanted to put on your home. And so they were able to undercut the cost of that roof repair because they were using inferior material that had no manufacturer's warranty and would very likely not stand up to the rigors of a Texas summer and the extreme heat that affects roofing systems in the state. Another common thing that we see is never finish the job. We had a situation some years back, again, another hailstorm. And what happened was they targeted a small community in Northeast Texas. And they specifically targeted the elderly. And what they did is they got the money up front. They may have done some initial, tarp covering of the hail damage to the roof, but then they took the money and they fled the state and went to California. It took us about a year and a half to eventually catch up to this contractor. And you guessed it, they had none of the money that they had taken from the victims in this community. So that's another very common scheme that occurs in the aftermath of a disaster. Next slide, please. What you will see sometimes in the contractor fraud or disaster fraud process is obviously the contractor that's agreed to do the work for you. Public adjusters may be in collusion with that contractor. There could be restoration companies that become involved, say they're going to come in and help dry out, the home if it received water damage. We even had cases where attorneys were involved in the scheme and were actually committing barratry by soliciting the activities to do roof repairs and things of that nature and repair the homes. And they actually had filed insurance claims on behalf of the owners of the homes and without their knowledge of doing so. So you have to be extremely careful. Just because somebody's got a title doesn't mean necessarily that that they're going to be honest in dealing with you. We've also found, sadly, that sometimes the insured party could be involved in the disaster or the insurance fraud crime itself, or they may not be involved. That's why we have to conduct very careful, thorough investigations in the aftermath of these things to ensure that the insured party is not involved. One of the things that we're facing right now, we've had recent legislative changes here in Texas that makes it a crime for a contractor to waive the payment of a deductible on an insurance claim, specifically a hail claim to a roof. They cannot do that. The contract between a homeowner is between that homeowner and the insurance company that insures their property. And there's a requirement for that homeowner, that insured party, to pay their fair share deductible in that loss. And so any contractor that shows up at your house, knocks on your door, and tries to entice you to get their business by waiving the deductible, that's a big red flag. You should politely show them to the front door, close it, and don't have any dealing with them again. That's a huge red flag. And if you become involved in that, you subject yourself to potential criminal penalty. Next slide, please. Again, I mentioned, we see the storm chasers that show up in the aftermath of a catastrophe. They conduct door-to-door solicitations. They may or may not have a solicitor's permit. They'll arrive at your home without you asking. Obviously, they target the homeowners, business owners. They'll offer to go up and do free roof inspections on your home. You got to be careful with that because they may go up there and intentionally cause damage to your roof if you're not paying attention. They may claim to be associated with some state or federal program such as FEMA, and I can assure you that that's a huge red flag. Nobody's going to do that. And so if you have somebody that shows up and does that, again, politely show them to the door and don't have anything else to do with them. One of the things we noticed in the aftermath of what we refer to as the Christmas tornadoes that occurred up in Dallas, Fort Worth in December some years back struck the communities of Rockwall and Rowlett and Garland is that we had a huge number of contractors that came in from different parts of the country. And they did door-to-door solicitations for the business. And again, that was about $1 billion storm. And we worked very closely with the Texas Department of Insurance Fraud Unit. We established a catastrophe response team, and we met with the community leaders in the municipalities that were affected and made some recommendations and suggestions, which they implemented to protect their citizens. And it worked very, very well. We've actually watched many contractors come in as the community leaders in those municipalities were vetting these contractors, and they simply turned around, went back to their vehicles and departed the area. So there's no telling how much fraud we were able to mitigate by just getting the communities to establish these emergency declarations to protect their citizens. And I would encourage all homeowners, when, gosh forbid, when this does happen, to be very involved with your community leaders, the building inspectors and so forth, to make sure that there's information available to you to help protect your home and business. Next slide, please. Again, some of the other tactics: high pressure sales. They'll be very aggressive to get you to sign on the dotted line. You want to be very, very cautious in dealing with contractors that are so pushy. They may even get your neighbors to put pressure on you if they've gotten them to sign. Again, be very, very careful about that, and at all costs avoid any cash incentives that they're offering to try and get your business. That's another big red flag that you should be very concerned about. Next slide. Another thing is to be especially cognizant if they ask or offer lengthy guarantees for the work. That's not industry norms. It should also be a tip off to you, the homeowner or business owner, that something is not right. They may offer these lengthy guarantees, but then they won't offer anything in writing to you. Again, that's another red flag to be extremely cautious and cognizant of. The other thing is, if they offer to handle all matters relating to the insurance claim, that too is a big red flag. Roofing contractors cannot become involved in the negotiation or settlement of your insurance claim. That's between you and your insurance company. And there are specific rules, regulations, laws that prohibit that type of conduct. So again, if you have a contractor offering that, politely show them the front door and move on. Next slide, please. So this is what I mentioned earlier. This was the Christmas tornado, and it just so happened one of our employees at the National Insurance Crime Bureau was victimized in that tornado and suffered quite a bit of damage. And being a retired law enforcement officer himself, and with the NICB for over 25 years, he proactively went out into his community and started encountering these contractors, asking them if they had bonds or if they had general liability or workers' compensation insurance, if he could see their driver's license. He was just very nosy and aggressive about protecting his neighbors and his friends. And a lot of these folks got the hint, packed up shop and left the area. But this happens over and over again. Doesn't matter whether it's North Carolina, Alabama, or Texas. In the aftermath of a catastrophe, you will see these folks descend upon a community, some to take advantage of the victims and victimize them a second time. And even though there's a lot of good contractors that show up, want to do the right thing, want to help and be of help to people in need, there are those that show up to take advantage of the victims of the catastrophe. Next slide, please. One of the common things is to what we refer to as mechanical damage, dime spinning, or using a ball peen hammer to damage a roofing system. And again, they'll target elderly individuals. They'll offer to go up and do a free inspection on their roof. And this is normally in the aftermath of a hailstorm. And even if there's no damage up there, when they get up there, there will be damage when they're finished doing what they're doing. And it's as simple as taking a dime and then just grinding that dime into the shingle, or taking a ball peen hammer and just indiscriminately striking the shingles upon the roof. The thing that a lot of these folks don't understand is that the insurance companies are very astute at identifying mechanically applied damage. When Mother Nature damages a roofing system through hail, there is no pattern that is discernible when you inspect that roof. Whereas mechanically applied damage by somebody that's intentionally damaging that roof system, you will see a pattern emerge, because I guess it's human nature to do things in a certain way, and it's extremely obvious. Also, the type of damage that hail causes on a shingle, as opposed to what occurs when they spin a dime or they use a ball peen hammer, which essentially crushes the granules on the shingles, is very noticeable to the trained professional. And now you've got a situation where you've got vandalism to the roof. It's no longer a hail claim, but is a vandalism claim. And so it changes the dynamic of that insurance claim when that happens to a business owner or a property owner of a residence. Next slide, please. I don't know whether you can get this to go or not, but this is a video which shows a contractor, and what he's doing is just using a dime, and he's making the marks or the Mars on the shingles. And you can see he's trying to be random about it, but again, it was very apparent. One of the things we did up in North Texas some years back is we partnered with the Texas Department of Insurance Fraud Unit, and thanks to my in-laws, we were able to use 2 of their rental properties, and we set up sting operations that were targeting the most nefarious roofing contractors that we suspected of doing this type of activity. And we set up the surveillance on these individuals, and we had great success. So, when we can, we certainly try to do proactive activities to catch people that are responsible for this type of conduct. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is some of the material that is available through the National Insurance Crime Bureau, and it's available to consumers. It's available to our federal, state, and local government and regulatory partners, and it's just, for the asking. So if any of the community leaders that are in attendance today, if you have need of any of this material that you want to keep in your city hall or any of your other facilities to use in the aftermath of a disaster, you can certainly contact me or NICB headquarters, and we will make this available to you so that you can pass that out to your citizens, that may be coming into your facilities. We also respond to most large catastrophes within our region, within our country. Typically, it's going to be hurricanes, and we basically set up a tent or a facility at what they call the catastrophe farms for the insurance industry. So this is typically at facilities like Home Depot and Lowe's. And if you look, you'll see a tent or a setup for the National Insurance Crime Bureau. And we're working directly with, in Texas, would be the Texas Department of Insurance Fraud Unit, and also the catastrophe response teams from the insurance industry. But these are really good tips to avoiding contractor fraud. More than one estimate, get everything in writing. Don't trust anybody that just, wants to give you a verbal commitment. Be proactive, be vigilant. Write down the license plate numbers. Don't be afraid to ask for their driver's license. Don't sign any contracts with blanks. Make sure you understand and review all the documents. Just don't sign. Ask for references. Again, be bold, be vigilant. The most important thing in your life, you're going to entrust to somebody to repair. You want to make sure you can trust them to do the job. Don't pay them in full or upfront, and don't let them pressure you into hiring them. Again, be polite, show them the front door, and do your homework ahead of time. It's always better to be prepared before the catastrophe or the disaster hits. Have a list of plumbers and electricians and roofers and contractors already available that you can go to your Rolodex and refer to when the need arises. When you're under tremendous pressure, you may not make the best choices if you don't have vetted contractors you can go to. Do Google searches on them. Check the good contractors list, Angie's list, the Better Business Bureau. Do your homework before you trust that work to any contractor to do repairs to your home or your business. Next slide, please. So the last thing I'd like to just mention is, just to conclude, usually it's going to involve legitimate claims in the aftermath of a natural disaster such as a hurricane, hailstorm, and of course it'll provide fertile ground for those that want to take advantage of the disaster and take advantage of the victims and victimize them again. So be vigilant, do your homework ahead of time, and there's certainly great resources out there with the National Insurance Crime Bureau. You can go online and look at we have a very robust site specifically set up to inform consumers and our law enforcement regulatory partners. Also, I can't say enough about our partners at the Texas Department of Insurance Fraud Unit. We have a great relationship with them, and they've also have a robust site to steer consumers in Texas with good information in the aftermath of these disasters. So if we can ever be assistance to our federal, state, and local partners here in the state, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or one of our special agents that are based throughout the state. Thank you very much for your time. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you very much, Fred. That was really enlightening and a lot of good information. And let's see, so we have a couple of more presentations left, and as Kate put in the chat box, you have opportunities to ask questions if you want to. We will have a Q&A after all the presentations, and we will be asking those questions out loud. The next couple of presentations we have will be from the Texas Department of Insurance and the Texas Windstorm Insurance Association, and we'll discuss more pointed information about, windstorm insurance and TDI. So we will, let's see. Okay, so our next speaker is Douglas Klopfenstein with the Texas Department of Insurance.
I work for the Texas Department of Insurance Windstorm Inspections Program in Corpus Christi, Texas. Today I'm covering 3 topics about the TDI Windstorm Inspections Program and how they relate to avoiding fraud after disaster. After today, you as a property owner will understand the basics about the TDI Windstorm Inspections Program, so when contractors come in the area after a storm, you will know what to look for and what is not and what is acceptable. When we think of disasters, a common word comes to mind: resilience. Resilience is the ability to regain a property to its original shape. And when we regain our properties to its original shape, our properties are involved in these 3 things. The first one is restoration, recovery, repair, and renovation. This is why it's so important to know about the TDI windstorm inspections program, knowing who the qualified inspectors are and knowing about the windstorm certificate of compliance, the WPI 8. Our first topic this afternoon is the windstorm inspections program, and we will understand when an inspection is required. This is our before you build card, and it applies to any structure that's located in any of the Texas coastal counties, and knowing when a WPI is needed. This will all apply to all new structures. It applies to room additions, alterations or repairs, re-roofs, or mechanical equipment. This document is also available on the TDI website at the link at the bottom of the screen. Now, although not all construction is required to be certified, TDI has a list known as our no inspection required rule. This is a list of 21 items that commonly do not require to be certified. Let's go over a couple of these. The first one that I will cover is roof repairs. And the item says, or the list says, roof repairs of less than 100 square feet, not involving roof decking or framing members. So if they're doing a small repair, 1 square of roof covering is approximately about 3 bundles of shingles. And if you get into other types of coverings like metal covering or maybe modified bitumen, it's 100 square feet, 10 by 10 area, or if you have small areas that it would accumulate up to 10 foot by 10 foot area. The next item, then we'll talk about our wall coverings or siding. And if you generally have wall coverings that need to have repairs made to them, it says that wall coverings repairs or replacement if the area is less than 10% of the surface area of the affected side of the structure. So what this basically means is if you got small minor repairs, as long as they don't add up to 10% of that one side, you're not going to have to worry about it. And so this applies to just small minor repairs, a piece here and a piece there. But if you're doing a substantial amount or even an amount that seems to be maybe 10% or larger of that one side of the structure, contact the department and we will help or guide you through that process. The last one I'll talk about are windows and doors. So this rule, part of the rule says window, glass doors, and exterior side hinge door replacement, not including frames, if the area is less than 10% of the surface area of the affected side of the structure. So basically, if they're replacing like a window pane or a door panel that does not include the window frame or the door frame, an inspection is not required. So you can, like my kids when they were younger, we broke some glass in the windows, and I just called the glass shop that was nearby, and they came and replaced it. That would not require a certification. And so if you're planning on doing work that requires to be certified, make sure you apply for an inspection. You can contact TDI or an appointed qualified inspector to notify them you are planning to do work. The WPI-1 that is shown in the screen needs to be submitted to the department before work begins. Just as the screen indicates, before or prior to the commencement of construction is the beginning of when it begins. So you might want to make sure that your contractor is contacting an inspector, whether it's a TDI inspector or an AQI, and have them fill out the WPI-1. Ask them for a copy of this WPI-1. And at the top right-hand corner, there should be what they call an application ID number. Look for that. Okay. Once the work is inspected and completed, the WPI-8 is available on the TDI website. If you're able to use a TDI windstorm inspector, the WPI is usually available 1 to 2 days after the inspection is made. If you're using an AQI, it may depend upon when they submit their report to the department. So this is a WPI 8 on the right-hand side. Not all construction is eligible for a WPI 8. The WPI 8 is an indication to the insurance companies that work is constructed to the adopted codes. If the work is done wrong, then the construction is not eligible for WPI 8. There is a note on every WPI 8 that indicates that construction was done to the applicable building codes or the adopted building codes. In 2021, the state legislation passed House Bill 3564 that does not permit the department to rescind a WPI anymore. To make sure that the work is completed correctly, you'll need to have an inspector come and inspect the work to make sure it complies with the adopted building codes. If work is not done correctly, TDI does not have the authority to retract a certificate of compliance anymore. So you need to make sure that construction is done correctly. My second topic today is qualified inspectors, and we will discuss who can perform a windstorm inspection. In 2015, House Bill 2439 was passed by the legislature that became effective January 1st, 2017. I'll talk about this briefly, but the law required TDI to only certify work that was inspected in process or what they called ongoing improvements. The other part of the bill required TWIA, which is known as Texas Windstorm Insurance Association, to certify work that was inspected after it was complete, or what they call substantially complete and completed improvements. In 2019, legislation passed House Bill 1900 and Senate Bill 615 that brought the certification of completed work back to the department. This process started on June 1st, 2021, where TDI began issuing the WPI for work in progress and the WPI-E for completed work. So, who do I call to request an inspection? For ongoing improvements, inspections must be performed by an AQI, or appointed qualified inspector, or a TDI windstorm inspector. For completed improvements, you'll need to find a Texas licensed professional engineer who is willing to sign off on the construction as being compliant with the adopted building codes. And my screen is not working very good, but there it is. All of the TDI windstorm inspectors have been trained to perform inspections and are certified inspectors. If you are interested in contacting TDI about the inspection process, TDI only inspects non-engineered structures and performs inspections on such things as siding, windows, doors, garage doors, and roofing. TDI inspectors do climb roofs. Make sure that the inspector of your project is performing the inspections. Homeowners often contact the department and state that they've never seen the inspector. And I know this firsthand because I've got relatives that said, I never saw my inspector. How can I ensure that I did get the inspections made? So you want to make sure you see the inspector and meet them. TDI inspector wears a badge and leaves a copy of their field report at the job site. And if we see any kind of issues, the issues are brought up to the homeowner's attention. This is a flow chart that the department developed that will kind of help you understand that process. Once again, I'll leave a copy of this where it's available to everybody that needs it, or you can contact me later. But this is based upon House Bill 1900 and Senate Bill 615, showing what can be inspected by a Texas licensed professional engineer or a AQI or a Texas Department of Insurance windstorm inspector. Our third topic this afternoon will be the windstorm certificate of compliance. And we will see how to get a copy of the WPI 8 or WPI E. For WPI 8 or WPI AE, please contact the department at 1-800-248-6032, or you can visit the TDI website at www.tdi.gov. www.tdi.texas.gov.windstorm, and then search for the certificate of compliance. Or to make it easier for you to see, I've developed this slide. And when you get to the search portion of the website, you can fill in what they call the application ID number in this area, or if you choose to, you can fill in the street name and the number, the city, zip code, or county. Now, on the street number, you have to have at least 1 digit. On the street name, you have to have at least 3 digits. On the city, zip code, or county, only put 1 in. A good rule to remember is not to put too much information into the city. Start with a minimum, and if you need more, then you can always add more to the address. If your contractor claims that the inspections are scheduled, you'll be able to go into the TDI website and search for your address to see if the application is set up. If it isn't, you may want to notify the contractor to let them know that the application is not on the TDI website. If you use the TDI windstorm inspectors, the application will be posted on the website before the first inspection is made. If you want copies of reports, pictures, or any other documentation, you may contact the TDI Open Records Department. And remember that all requests must be in writing. If you have any questions about this presentation, please contact me at the information on the screen. I'll be available to answer questions at the end of the program. If you suspect that your work is being done is not correct, or your WPI-1 is not listed on the TDI website, please contact me at your earliest convenience. And if you have any questions about the TDI windstorm inspections in general, please contact our TDI engineering at 1-800-248-6032 and choose option 5. Once again, I will be available for questions, and thank you for the invitation and for your time.
Great, thank you. Do that. Okay, we have one more presentation. It's a shorter presentation, I believe less than 10 minutes. Thank you. We're getting some questions in the Q&A box. We have this webinar going until about 2 o'clock, but depending on how long the Q&A takes, we might end shorter depending on how many questions you guys have. So we have David Lawson, who is the Senior Business Continuity and Catastrophe Plan Analysis for the Texas Windstorm Insurance Association.
Hello, my name is David Lawson, and I'm with the Texas Windstorm Insurance Association. We want to thank Texas Sea Grant for having us out today to talk to you as homeowners about how you can avoid fraud after a storm. To the average homeowner, insurance fraud may not seem very impactful. For some, they may think, hey, we're getting a few $1,000s off overall. Why should we care if it hurts the insurance company? But it doesn't just hurt the insurance company. When an insurance company pays for a fraudulent claim, that money comes from the premiums that are put in by all the consumers that are a part of that company. According to the FBI, fraud occurs in 10% of all property losses. And over 14,000 fraud reports were received by the Department of Insurance in 2020 alone. Overall, this cost the average U.S. family between $400 and $700 in premium every year. How does that end up at the policyholder's feet, though? Let's say that we had a large storm, and we have 100 fraudulent claims that are filed with estimates that pay out about $20,000 each. That's $2 million that have been paid out fraudulently. And that's $2 million less that's available for the company to pay for actual legitimate claims. And it's not only the financial impacts. Later down the road, if maybe the fraud was not detected on the front end and there is another claim, it's quite possible that the issues related to that initial claim may be identified, which can prevent the claim from being accepted and the damage being repaired because of those issues. The issues with insurance fraud become very much in focus after a large storm. In Texas, we have no requirement for contractors to be licensed. So, after a large storm, there are people from all over the country who are looking for opportunities to make a quick buck, whether that be tree removal companies, tarping companies, or what we call two chucks in a truck companies, who come in without any sort of crew or equipment and then promise the moon to homeowners who have just experienced some of the most heavy damage that they'll ever experience to their home. Sometimes cities will put in place a contractor sign-in area in order to prevent these sorts of actors from entering in the community. However, this is a city-by-city setup that is not something that is a requirement for cities and counties to put in place. Many people outside of the state, regardless of their intentions, may not understand the complexities involved with building in the Texas coast. So, what are some ways for homeowners to protect themselves? The first is to do some work before damage ever occurs after a storm. And that's to work throughout the year to find a local contractor that you trust, whether that's from a recommendation from your friends, family, or neighbors, or online reviews. It's important that you have a comfortability with the people who are going to be doing the work on your most important investment that you'll ever make. Secondly, don't pay anything up front. Always make sure that the work is done and done according to code before you pay anything. Skip offers to waive or pay your deductible. Texas has a new law that makes sure that people who have received claims payments provide proof that they have also paid their deductible. Read what you sign. The small letters on those contracts may seem insignificant or perhaps hard to understand, but they may have a huge impact on the back end of your claim. And always be wary of anybody knocking on your door that you didn't invite to your home. And then, if you still have questions, ask if they understand the WPI-8 process. The individual and unique nature of the Texas coast and the code surrounding construction done on the coast after a storm is very important for homeowners to understand. If you run into a contractor who does not know about the WPI-8 process, stop and think if there's a different way or somebody else that you could go with. Finally, I wanted to go over some of the things that Texas Windstorm is doing to help protect our policyholders and coastal communities from fraud. Texas Windstorm has what's called a Special Investigation Unit. This is a third-party vendor that helps us both investigate and identify internal and external fraud. When a claim comes in, we use a scoring system that helps identify some of the red flags that are known for fraudulent claims. After a large event, this group also goes out and canvasses the impacted neighborhoods to be on the lookout for signs of suspicious activity. While we're doing this, we work with local police departments and cities to ensure that when we identify these issues, they can be immediately addressed so that nobody gets taken advantage of. Again, I want to thank Texas Sea Grant for having us out to talk a little bit about fraud. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them after the presentations are over. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating and coming on to share those resources. We had obviously some overlaps because it's a very narrow topic, but very important, and we hope that you guys learned something. If you want to start by asking some questions. Oh, I guess right off the bat, just someone asked if they could have access to some of the PowerPoints. I can reach out to you guys afterwards to see if that's okay, and we can try to do it where they can't be edited. But yeah, we can share some PowerPoints and the recording.
Okay, so we did receive some questions via email before the presentation started. Someone wrote in about providing information about cars that were damaged during disaster and being resold. It looks like this is another scam that happens. So if anybody has information, it's a little bit different from what some of you reported presented on. But if you have any information about disaster damaged cars.
Yeah, I'll respond to that. The National Insurance Crime Bureau maintains what was initially in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. We established the flood vehicle database, and today that database is known as VinCheck, and it's accessible through the National Insurance Crime Bureau's national website at www.nicb.org. You can go to VinCheck, and you're able to put the VIN number of that vehicle that you're inquiring on into the system to determine if it's stolen or if it has previously been a vehicle involved in a flood damage claim. There's also some other consumer available databases such as Carfax for government, the National Motor Vehicle Titling and Information System, but there's a number of resources out there that will identify those flood damaged vehicles. Today, we are really so much better off than we were when Hurricane Katrina happened. Back in when that occurred, we physically, with our law enforcement partners, examined and cataloged over 400,000 vehicles that were damaged as a result of that event. Today, the insurance industry, working with Copart, Manheim, IAA, the big salvage companies for the insurance industry, there's a integrated process when that claim is set up on a flood damaged vehicle. That information is now automatically put into not only the NICB system, but to Navitas, and there's an accounting of all those vehicles. The only vehicles that can slip by are those that don't have an insurance interest. So for example, if you have only liability insurance on your vehicle and it's flooded, there's no formal legal mechanism to compel you to report that vehicle as a flood damaged vehicle. Now, there are state laws in most states that compel you to disclose when you sell that vehicle that it's flood damaged, and in not doing so, you can expose yourself to criminal penalty under the Consumer Protection Act here in Texas. But there's a lot of vehicles that do slip through the cracks because they don't have comprehensive insurance coverage, and they're not part of that accounting that takes place through the salvage and claim process.
Thank you. That's great information. Let's see, what else do we have? TDI must get very busy when a disaster hits. Are there alternative forms of assistance that people can seek out when they are going through the recovery period? Sorry, Mike. I wanted to be on the webinar today.
Well, as far as other assistance, I'm not aware of any. We do ask people contact the department as soon as they have an issue, because once again, it comes down to timing. And if you wait a few days or a few weeks and our workload builds, you might end up having to use an engineer that can do your work. And then you have to pay for those engineering services. And so if you have any questions, please contact the department, number one, before a storm hits, so you know who to contact after it hits.
There was also a question about legal help. So does anyone know about legal groups or lawyers that specialize in disaster fraud that can take a case if somebody, actually suspects that they're victim of fraud?
I don't know of any particular kind of law groups outside of what's available through the Office of the Attorney General. I think one thing that was definitely big after Hurricane Harvey was making sure that we get people to submit complaints and issues with possible fraud and things like that to the Office of the Attorney General, so that they can begin kind of sort of building that up and figuring out where they can kind of insert themselves to, from everything from price gouging to the contractor fraud that we're talking about here. But outside of that, I'm not very much aware of anything or any group that would provide kind of pro bono services or anything like that.
Jerry, I think you're on mute.
Yeah. I actually make more sense when I'm on mute, but some of the legal aid, local legal aid services get familiar with that. I know the Rio Grande Valley is very familiar with disaster-related kinds of claims because they often have to deal with them. So that's a possible whatever person to reach out to is a local legal aid. They're in the community. They're approached obviously by a lot of folks that have the same issues you might have. So they will have not expertise, at least some contact places that you to say, these folks might be able to help you.
Okay, we'll look for that website and post that shortly. Another question. I've seen on Facebook that sometimes people pretend to be FEMA and make phone calls, or they'll come to your door. How do we know if people are actually representatives from FEMA or other agencies and companies?
Well, they should ask to see their credentials, and they should be obvious government credentials if in fact that they do. But depending on what their spiel is or their request or what they're trying to accomplish, you got to ask the question, does this activity that they're involved in fit the activities of FEMA or whatever government agency they purport to be affiliated with? And most of the time when you get a situation like that, it's not going to make sense. FEMA's not going to knock on your door in the aftermath of a disaster. That's not how that organization works. So, and also if in fact they identify themselves as a government official, say of FEMA, I would record that information, take your phone, do a photograph of the document or the identification, and then go verify it. Call the local FEMA office and say, hey, I've got this person at my home. Is if in fact, are they really an employee of FEMA? And more importantly, what are they doing here? Again, you got to be vigilant, and you don't have to be ugly about it, but you have to be, sometimes aggressive in protecting, your own self-interest.
This was actually a problem that came up after Harvey for us in particular. All of our adjusters are third-party vendors that we utilize to do the number of inspections that we have to. Now, the inspections are done all by appointment, and the name, the contact information, and all of that information will be provided to the policyholder when they set that up. But we had incidents where some folks were going door to door telling people that they were TWIA adjusters and that they required a fee to perform the service. First of all, that would never happen and is not a part of how Texas Windstorm or really any insurance company does their business. But we follow the same sort of badging system as FEMA and a lot of the response organizations do. So that we have that kind of similarity and there can be an acknowledgement of what sort of resource you are. but it's also something that we have standardized throughout every single person that is on the coast after a storm. Every single TWIA employee will have a badge with their badge number, a QR code that provides a phone number for their superior. And so that's really, really important for people to understand. And it goes back to just general best practices. If somebody's coming to your door unsolicited, I would be very hesitant, unless they're selling delicious Girl Scout cookies or chocolates for the band. Super in favor of that. But definitely, if they're coming to your house selling something, always be on the lookout and be very wary of that.
Yeah, the General Land Office partnered with FEMA, the front end of Harvey. And I actually was doing some FEMA appointments. And I knocked on the door and the lady said, "Who are you?" And I said, "This is who I am," showed her my credentials. "Well, I don't believe you." I mean, this lady did it right. She said, "I don't believe you." And I said, "Well, you can call my superior. I can give you the number." She said, "No, I'm not going to call your number. I'm going to look up FEMA and I'm going to call them." And I said, "That's fine. You know, please do. I'll just wait out here on the front porch." And about half an hour later, she came back. That's the way you do it. And if somebody's legitimate, like I was legitimate, didn't bother me, I don't blame her. That's smart. So don't be afraid to say, "You wait here," and not even necessarily the number they give you, but go look it up, you know, find the number yourself and confirm it, because that's the safest way to do it for sure. And this lady did it right.
Even all the TDI inspectors wear badges and they carry business cards, and should not be a problem to pick up that number. And even on our field reports, we have the phone number to TDI. So you should be able to pick that phone number up and call the department to find out if it's legit or not.
Thank you. We have a question in the chat. It says, is a contractor responsible for arranging local building inspections after completing the job, or is the owner responsible for making those arrangements on big or small repair work?
This is Jerry again. The answer to that is both. I mean, it will depend on how closely you're working with your contractor. At some point, the homeowner is going to have to sign that permit. They're going to have to be a part of that. Generally, the contractor will call for the inspection. They'll do that sort of legwork, but at the end of the day, the homeowners aren't going to be on that permit, particularly on a rehabilitation project. So it's a little of both. I would say this: if you defer to your contractor, which is not a problem. I just recently had some electrical work, and he pulled the permit for me. That's fine. But if you do that, make sure you see the permit.
Okay.
Make sure that you confirm he's got a document from your city or your county, whichever it's going to come from one or the other. And that in fact he did pull that permit. But there's no reason in the world that the homeowner can't do that themselves.
Well, remind me if I'm wrong, but the homeowner is ultimately responsible once that contractor has done the work and gone. And if he hasn't pulled the proper permits, that homeowner is the one that's responsible for it. So that's why I said in my presentation that the homeowner needs to go to the TDI website to make sure that the contractor did pull the proper permits with TDI.
Yep, that's absolutely. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if they're not doing those things, again, that's sort of that red flag. If they balk at talking about how they're getting this, because that WPI8 inspection from TDI, that's before, during, and after. That is they will stop people in the middle of the inspection if they've seen things that are, they're installing the shingles improperly. I've seen it up there. And so it's really helpful, but it's again, that red flag. If somebody's hesitant or doesn't understand that process, it can be very costly to the homeowner. but more so it should be kind of a signal that maybe we should be looking for somebody else to do this work.
Mhm.
Imagine that, if a contractor is not local or, even just Texas coast, they come from another city or something, but it should be on the coast, because if somebody from, like Iowa or South Dakota is coming down, they wouldn't necessarily be familiar with the building codes or building standards that are necessary for coastal homes.
But I think it's important to also point out, we say out of town contractors a lot. One thing that's really important to understand, especially if we're in, Galveston County, Corpus Christi, a large urban area, labor is sometimes hard to find. After Hurricane Harvey, it was very difficult for people to get the labor that they needed to do the job. So out of town folks shouldn't disqualify them necessarily, but definitely poke and prod, see where you can, but understand that, in some of these scenarios, unless you've got a contractor that you had lined up and is really part of kind of your maintenance package that you have on your property, for lack of a better term, that may be an option that you're forced to go with. But, again, the professional contractors will do that research and understand what sort of environment that they're going into. And, I'm a Texan. I love working with Texans, but sometimes it's not always possible. And so I think it's important for us to kind of make that differentiation, that sometimes that labor market is demanding out of town people come in and help out.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
There's another issue just to touch on that's related, and that is some homeowners will be in a county that has virtually no permitting. There are no building inspectors. It's just not there. I'm in a county where we're doing some work, and the only thing we have to have is an electrical inspection, and that's only for the line coming into the house, not the house itself. Nobody else is going to look at this house. If you're in that situation as a homeowner and you don't understand construction, you're going to want to find somebody to do what we call a third-party inspection. You will want to find somebody to make sure that the work that contractor is doing is in fact up to code and meets the standards. Now, if you're in Corpus or you're in a city, that's not an issue. But a lot of, out in the smaller counties, a lot of times they might look at the septic, for example, but that's it. And so if you're in an area that doesn't have local code building inspectors or county building inspectors, find somebody, pay them a couple $300, whatever the going rate is, to take a look at that for you. Mm-hmm. Because just having that person, your contractor, if they were to lean a little bit shady or whatever, and most contractors are good. It's not about, most of them do great work. But if they know and somebody's looking over their shoulder, it just keeps things a little bit cleaner. That just makes a difference. So in some cases, you might have to actually find an inspector rather than rely on a local one.
Well, in 2018, the Texas Department of Insurance adopted the September the 1st, 2020, TDI adopted the 2018 I codes. And if you have any questions in regards to what the adopted codes are, you can always contact the TDI engineering at the number I provided. But if you're doing things like roofing, replacing windows or doors, garage doors, or siding, you can contact one of our local representatives and we'll be able to help you through that. Now, we do have a list of products that have been tested on the TDI website. You're more than welcome to go there and research your products, but call us and we'll try to help you through that process.
I think one other thing to at least note, kind of going back to how a homeowner can figure out if the home has had certificates issued. The TDI website, really, that search function is a really great tool. So if you are looking at a home to purchase, if you've just purchased one, or if you've never really thought about it before, I'd really recommend going to that and just typing in that address and seeing what comes up, because those WPI8s will still be there. There will be a record if there was a re-roof done in 2016, if there was siding done. And so that can maybe help you determine at least maybe some age, the condition, or whether or not you might have some red flags where you might need to reach out to that third-party inspector to come in and determine, are there issues with my home right now? So that's a really great resource if you're questioning or if you're not sure, because on the Texas windstorm on the insurance side, WPI8s are part of the eligibility process. And so let's say if we have paid for a re-roof and there was no WPI8, issued on that, we're not going to pay for that again because we don't have that proof that the work was done. And so, if there's another claim on that roof or there was no certificate issued, we wouldn't be able to pay that a second time. And so really doing the thorough due diligence, on your property and the history of it where possible, that's really important to getting the full picture of your home, the construction of it. If it's, kind of an older home, before 2012.
Thank you. I think we don't have well, somebody may be able to speak to this. We don't have a flood person on this webinar, but I believe that the Texas legislature passed a new law a couple years ago that when somebody sells a house, they have to disclose if it's been flooded in the past. I think that, there wasn't a way to tell that before the legislature passed that new law. Don't know exactly the process, but does anybody? Go ahead,
I'm
Dave.
just shooting from the hip here from what I know, what I recollect from that. But really, this goes back to, just because your home hasn't flooded before doesn't mean that it won't happen. Just because a home is not in one of these flood zones or a part of, the NFIP maps doesn't mean that it hasn't happened before. And so when that was put in place during that real estate transaction, there are seller's disclosures that you have to go through, and that is a part of that process. And one thing that I know there is at least some talks about is, how do we expand that out maybe a little bit more when we get down to the coast, and thinking about some other claims and some other ways to utilize those disclosures. But yeah, that is very much on the transactional side, and is definitely a hot topic on the realtors, the Texas Realtors group. But that was the impetus for it, was Hurricane Harvey, and understanding that any place can flood, regardless, especially down there on the coast in the coastal plain. That's absolutely something that's important. And if you're buying a property down there, that is absolutely something I would be encouraging everybody to make sure you're doing your due diligence, you're working with your inspectors, and really understand the condition of the home and the area, the history of the area, in terms of meteorology.
Thank you. Thank you for the additional information about that.
Don't hold me to that. I'm not a legislative expert.
Oh, here we go. There's some information about this in the chat. Senate Bill 339 talks about flood damage disclosure. Thank you, Kat. I'm not seeing any more questions. Ashley, did you get any questions?
I just kind of I guess the one last overall summary of, I talked about how Aransas County and Rockport did a contractor registry to help their citizens know who's trusted without having to go through all of the background research. I was wondering if through some of the recent storms like Harvey and stuff, if any of you are aware of any other strategies that cities use to help their constituents with, avoiding fraud, and if you can share any of those. Just wanted to see if there's anything else you've heard out there that people have already done.
Well, I know that the city of Rockport registered over 1,000 contractors after Hurricane Harvey. So that is one way of eliminating that. So what it comes down to, when that contractor leaves, if he leaves the homeowner's house a mess, they've got a way to contact that contractor. Without a registration, they have no way of contacting them.
Yeah.
This kind of goes down to, at least in the impacted area, we actually had the incident that we had in Sinton, just through our normal SIU canvassing, we can catch some of those things and work with the municipalities and the local police departments to help really kind of nip some of this in the bud. But, I think it's really kind of encouraging your local leaders. If you live in a smaller town, if you live in an unincorporated area, reach out to your county, reach out to your city council, ask them if they're doing this. I know that recently, a couple years ago, the TDI fraud enforcement folks met with the Texas City people and have kind of put in place a plan to basically duplicate what Rockport and Fulton did in terms of that contractor registration. So it's definitely community by community. But if you are involved in your community, I definitely encourage you to reach out to your local leaders and encourage them to do that. Until we have kind of contractor licensing at the state level, that's really going to be the main answer to a lot of this.
Sounds like that would be another good thing for cities to establish that process beforehand. Don't wait until you just had a disaster to figure out how to do a contractor registry. It's kind of one of those blue sky activities.
Yes. And I hate to volunteer TDI, but TDI fraud enforcement would probably love to have those conversations.
Yeah, that's the most effective small community means that I've seen, is if a small community ahead of time will put in place the procedures they need to register contractors and put in place a way to get that information out to the people, because that's the second thing. If nobody knows it's there, it doesn't do them any good. And so you really have to work hard, like you said, blue skies, to put those things in place, but it's very effective. I worked with Beaumont, they had that in place, and we sniffed out a bad contractor because they were doing their due diligence at the city level. So it's effective, it works. It not only helps you track them down, but for example, if Susie Smith has a bad experience and she lets the local muni know and they have that registry, then you can call them and say, hey, this company is offering to do work. Do you have any issues? Has anybody had any issues with them? So it's a living, breathing sort of tracking mechanism, and frankly, it's probably more effective in a smaller community than a larger. Just because, again, there's just so much interaction with folks. So I think that's from what I've seen, that's the most effective, and it really doesn't take a lot of effort. Takes some, but not a lot. And it can be really effective.
Thank you.
Well, I think that's all we have for now. We can let everyone go just a little bit earlier. When you sign out of the webinar, a survey is going to pop up asking you a few questions. If you could please take 5 minutes to fill that out, that would help us tremendously as we try to always adjust how we're doing these and improve upon it every time. This is our last webinar for the year, but we are working on a series of in-person workshops for spring 2022. And we're going to keep everyone updated on that. We have great people who are going to be joining us, some of the same agencies you've seen throughout the year who have presented. Thanks, Walter, through all of these. So as we continue to plan and develop those, we are going to let everyone know and keep everyone informed about that. And let's see.
We're looking at 3 in-person locations so that people don't have to, the Texas coast is very long. We don't want people to have to travel a long ways. So we're trying to hit the upper coast, the coastal bend, and the Rio Grande Valley.
Yes, so we'll be in your area and we'll have some of these folks with us in tow. Hopefully we can do it in person. But yeah, before we go, I'm going to leave up a screen with all the contact information. Please feel free to reach out, and we will be providing a recorded link soon, and we will also be providing the PowerPoints to everyone who attended and registered. So thank you for joining us, and thank you panelists so much for joining us. This was really informative information, and we're going to try to spread this as far as wide as we can. I think it's very important.
Thanks again for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye all.